Welcome to the Strategic Veteran, where we chart the course from service to civilian triumph. I'm Adam Peters, a veteran, entrepreneur, and your fellow navigator in the quest for a life of impact and fulfillment. My mission is simple: to empower you with the tools and stories that turn challenge into opportunity. Having walked the path from active duty to where I stand now, I understand the search for purpose that comes with hanging up the uniform. It's a path I've walked, with its trials, its tribulations, and its victories, and it's a journey we're on together. This podcast is more than just conversation. It's a beacon for those seeking to redefine our missions through entrepreneurship. It's about igniting the entrepreneurial spirit that lives within us, the spirit that compels us to create, lead, and make our mark on the world. Here we connect with veterans who have built businesses, sparked change, and found their purpose in the marketplace of ideas. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They've transformed their service into startups, their experiences into enterprises, and they're proof that you can too. So whether you're scribbling business plans on napkins or stepping into the arena of innovation, remember, you're not alone. You're in good company. So let's explore these stories of transformation and take the first steps together on our path to purpose. Let's begin. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Strategic Veteran. I'm your host, Adam Peters, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Wendy Ray, a former Army captain who's been nothing short of remarkable. With 5 years of active duty in the Adjutant General Corps, Wendy's experience spans multiple leadership roles, all of which have deeply influenced her passion for people and helping others, especially veterans. From a small town in South Florida, Wendy joined the military to challenge herself and admittedly to prove to her father wrong. This decision has shaped her into the incredible woman, wife, and mother she is today. During her service, a pivotal piece of advice from a lieutenant colonel about the importance of self-care and leadership significantly impacted her, guiding her post-military journey. Transitioning from the military brought its own set of challenges, including self-doubt and a lack of confidence. However, Wendy's journey through trial and error led her to a fulfilling path where she now dedicates her life to helping others. As the host of the Beyond the Military podcast, Wendy uses her platform to support military women in building balanced lifestyles, leading with a clear mind, and pursuing their goals without burnout. Wendy's core values of love, integrity, courage, and curiosity guide her both professionally and personally. Her mission is clear: to help women in the military women live beyond their military careers, focusing on their mental and emotional health. So join us as we delve into Wendy's story, a true embodiment of what it means to be a strategic veteran dedicated to empowering others and living a life of purpose and balance. Wendy, we finally made this happen after a couple of cancellations and moving it around on the schedule. So grateful that you're here. Happy to have you, and I can't wait to dive right in.
Absolutely. And Adam, thank you so much again for rescheduling a couple of times. We were not only battling Mother Nature here, but also our own schedule. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, everything you said was not only impactful for me to actually type and read again, because when you sent me kind of like here's a scheduling link, answer a few questions, and let's make this happen, it really gave me an opportunity to reevaluate my values, reevaluate, where I came from. And so I want to thank you for allowing me to do that on my own time and
Yeah,
also
course.
making it, a prerequisite for me to be here and continue to support your community.
Well, I'm humbled by that. I really appreciate that. And we're in the same space helping other people, and I'm glad to know that actually helped you, because it helps me, right? Like, it helps me figure out who you are so I can have the conversation with you. But I didn't really realize it was having that impact on people. So I'm really glad to hear that it is having an impact on people.
Yeah.
And so with that, let's just dive right into your early life and what inspired you to join the military, though I think we've got a little clue that your dad is a big part of that, huh?
Yeah. No, he really is still very instrumental within my decisions that I make. He's always been the guy that really wanted me to be independent. And so by him wanting that, he really helped me since I can't even remember. He would really want me to be independent just by simply allowing space for me to make my own decisions. And let me give you an example. So he's Guatemalan, Central America, that's where he was born and raised. And so he immigrated here, I want to say early 80s, and then eventually was able to get his residency and green card and all of that other great stuff. but he allowed me to, in the culture, greeting is a very important thing. It's, a good morning. Even if you're having a terrible morning, it's good morning. And so I remember it was storming. I was raised in Florida, and I was scared of the storm. I think I was 3 or 4, maybe 4 at the most. And we had visitors come by, and he allowed me to, one, be scared, but also within my fear of being scared, he also gently reminded me that we had visitors, right? So pretty much still a toddler. And he was like, okay, Wendy, I know the storm is a little, it's scary, but kind of hinting like, okay, now let's do our greeting. And so I was scared, and I'm like, oh, should I like really get out there? And I was hiding underneath the table. So I was scared, and I'm like, but so big. And I come out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be greeting them. So he gave me a minute, and he's like, okay, she's clearly not doing it. So he's like, okay, Wendy, let's greet our visitors. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I need to greet them. And so he gave me the opportunity to be scared. And then he also invited me to, let's continue our tradition. Let's continue to do what I've taught you to do. And so that's just a small example of allowing me to decide. And if I, wasn't making the decision that, of course, he wanted me to do, or in order for me to grow or be better at, he would then kind of give me a hint. And I think that was crucial for me, because it allowed me to be independent, right? And then with that independence came confidence, which, at every level of our lives, and I'm sure you've dealt with this, and just based on the stories that I've seen on LinkedIn that you post, we kind of lack confidence at every stage of our lives, no matter, where we come from, how much money in the bank we have, what degrees we have, what experiences we have. But there will always be times where we lack a little confidence. And so, with that, I try to instill that with my kids too, give them an opportunity to be independent, to help them figure out the way and build confidence for themselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. I didn't have people like that in my life growing up to help me build the confidence. They let me be the scared little kid hiding under the table, and didn't give me that push. So it's awesome to hear that. But how did you have to prove your dad wrong? Was it joining the military that he was against? Was that?
So yes, and going back to that, thank you for leading
No,
me
it's
back to
good.
that
It's
dear
good. We're
question.
good.
So yes, he wanted me to do so. So here's the thing: he wanted me to. He was raising me like his son, essentially, but he didn't want me to do the things that a son would typically do, right? Like join the military or do anything that was, you know, risky or scary for him as a parent. And so I remember him, saying, military is not an option, because I was in JROTC. And so I remembered that in the back of my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm going to join everything. They had like a little Ranger team in JROTC. I joined that. I just wanted to be in shape. I wanted to be, a great candidate for basic training. I'm like, I want to be able to run a 2 miles and do pull-ups and do push-ups. And so all of that, I was really in my head. I'm like, I'm going to just, prove my dad wrong. I'm going to join the military. But I was honestly doing it for me, to convince myself and to really sell myself that I can do this. But I use my dad as an excuse. We sometimes use this external kind of excuse, but internally there's something more. And for me, it was more of like, this is my excuse. I'm going to tell everybody, I'm going to prove my dad wrong. And, my dad's not going to be happy. And, but really I was doing it to really fulfill that belief for myself.
It's
But yeah,
it's
that's
awesome
kind of
that
like,
you can it's awesome that you can look back and realize you were doing it for yourself. And I would argue it's not an excuse, but just an external motivator. The reason that you said you were doing it was to prove your dad wrong. I think that that's more of a motivator than an excuse, because,
yes,
whether you realized it at the time or not, there's probably a certain element of, okay, I know my dad doesn't want me to do this, but if I don't succeed at this, I'll feel like I'm letting him down, right? And
Yes.
so that's a super powerful motivator. And I think it's really cool that you now realize, and I don't know if you realized it in the moment or not, but that you realize you were actually doing it for yourself and leaning on your dad as that external motivation. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, great point on the external motivator. And to answer your question, I actually didn't realize it then. I realized it later as I was, when you like go and do something and then halfway you're like, crap, why did I get myself into this?
Yeah.
That was
Oh
when I
yeah.
realized like it wasn't about my dad. It was about really me, being in this moment and am I really going to complete it? Am I going to, follow through? And that was again my intrinsic motivator then.
Yeah, and so you did. You saw it through. You end up becoming a commissioned officer in the United States Army and the Adjutant General Corps. Um, this is for me more than it is the audience or the listener or whatever I'm supposed to call them. The people that give me views and downloads, I appreciate all of you. I just don't know how you want to be referred to. But anyway, what is the Adjutant General Corps? I have no idea. Like, are you guys a bunch of lawyers and TDS, Trial Defense
Yeah.
Services? Is that what you guys are?
No. It's a fancy name that was really the history of it. Unfortunately, I don't know as, detailed as I should, but I know it started from the early times where the Adjutant General was the one that did like the call of everyone needing to be present. Like it was the,
So
the
roll
trumpet
call.
of,
Yeah.
we're going to pretty much be ready to form up, right? And so it started from there, it stemmed from there, but it truly is only human resources. That's what it really is. It's just a fancy name that kind of stuck and continued. And I have no idea if they're going to change it. They might, because also more of a little history for the enlisted side. We weren't one before. We were all different teams that somehow communicated with the adjutant general. But now we're under one umbrella. So it's all now human resources because before finance used to be their own little thing. Leave used to be their own little department. Policy, all of that stuff used to be all different with different, I think it was like 73 Delta. It was some random military occupation code. And now it's all, at least in the
It's all
Army,
the same
it's
thing.
all human resources, correct. They're all, no matter what unit you're in, you're going to learn to do everything from leave to pay to manpower, all of that stuff.
Nice. So why did you go to the Adjutant General Corps? Was it just kind of what was offered to you? Were you interested in it? Why didn't you pick something else? It always fascinates me to see why people pick the jobs that they do.
Yeah,
And we've had a lot of infantry guys on the show, which is just, I mean, it's common, right? Like a lot of guys go infantry. They just want to do that. We get caught by the recruiting videos most of the time. I want to jump out of helicopters
right.
and
Yeah.
kick doors down, but sometimes people are forced into that. They don't get a choice. So, how did that come about for you?
Yeah. So thankfully for me, I was given an opportunity to rank the job that I wanted. I think it's very similar. Like when we enlist, I was able to say, okay, here are my 5 options, but I really truly want to do this one thing. And for me, when I was in school, at least the way ROTC is done, you get to go into they're calling assessing your position on what you're going to get either by your duty station, by your job, and also by your component being active duty, reserve, or National Guard. So based on where you rank, and that's included with your GPA, your physical training test, leadership feedback that you get assessed on. So a lot of factors play into the job, the role that you get. And most importantly, knowing what I know now, the demand of the military when you're going through this process. Of course.
Always
Yeah.
needs the Army, right?
Right. It's always like what's going to benefit the Army or the branch, which of course makes sense. And so for me at the time, I had actually wanted to go medical service. That was like my number one. My number two was logistics, and number three was adjutant general, and then number four, I believe it was the top. One of the top five requests had to be combat arms, and I think my fourth one was field artillery, and then everything else, I'm like, whatever I get is completely fine with me. But I was lucky enough to be able to branch human resources, Adjutant General. Because honestly, if I would have gotten anything else, I'm pretty sure I would have done well as well. But being a human resources officer for a unit organization, it allowed me to really see or show me who I really was, and who my audience was, who I was really serving. And it really helped me understand too why I was there. Because
Well,
we have
and
bad moments in the military.
I relate to that a lot, particularly with what you're saying about HR, because when I got hurt, I ended up in a training room for a while and I got to see how the machine works. And I was like, man, like there's so much you just don't, everybody thinks a training room or having to work in a talk on a deployment. And I did both. So full transparency, my Afghanistan deployment, I was the talk NCOIC and the training room NCOIC at the time. So two giant jobs that I took on and did well at. But everybody thinks that's a death sentence in your career, and it's just a terrible place to be. And at the time, I kind of had, as a line guy, right? Like as an infantry guy, of course, I want to be boots on the ground doing what I've done, my entire career. But it's just, I was a liability at that point because I was still hurt and somehow found my way into that deployment. But learning how the machine, like it was such an opportunity that made me so much better of an NCO, because now I don't need to rely on S1 to fix pay issues because I understand how all that works. I don't need to rely on S1 to, fix my awards because I understand how that works.
Yes.
I understand the whole process overall. And it was the same with the talk. Like, I, not to toot my own horn, but I created an entire system for the aerostat platforms on the TigerNet over there that had never been done before. And I had people reaching out to me of some very high rank, like, hey, how did you do this? How did you come up with this? And it allowed me to see the bigger picture, how the machine works, how the battle space works together in something bigger than a platoon or a company element. Now I'm looking at multiple, battalions on the battlefield at the same time and having to move troops around. So I absolutely relate to what you're saying about the human resources side of it and getting that peek behind the curtain.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that you bring this up because it really goes hand in hand on what you and I are doing right now with veterans. It's all about the beauty of the military background experience, right? No other industry field is going to allow someone that has no experience, no background, or certification on the one thing, right? In this case, HR, they're like, I know you can do the work because I know you as an individual, as an infantryman, and I know that you will, start running as soon as you hit the ground. And that is the beauty of our experience, our skills, our backgrounds, our abilities, because I'm telling you, nowhere else they would allow someone to do that. And then you have this opportunity to look at this, this career with different lenses, which helps you as a leader because now you have, like you said, people that work for you or that are on your team. And now you can say, you know what, Private Ray, I got you. I know exactly the form that you need. I know exactly the process. I want you to be at ease a little bit, right? Because that's what we do. We try to help them manage their emotions in a way where, sometimes they just need us. And we can't do it any other way, but just assuring them that we've got them. And that's what the military is all about.
I think what you're hinting at is it really helps develop you into that, beyond just the leader, but that servant leader role, right? Because now I can absolutely maximize how I'm able to serve those that I'm leading because I have so much knowledge versus pigeonholing myself into this tunnel vision where all I know is how to be an infantryman. I know all the battle drills inside and out, and I can teach you all of those. But what are we looking at on a larger scale of professional development, right?
Yeah.
So I'm interested. I usually ask people what the pivotal moment during their military service was that impacted them, but you answered that question for us in the advice that you got from a lieutenant colonel. I'm willing to bet that is probably the most impactful thing that happened to you while you're in. So would you mind sharing what that advice was and how that still stays with you in what you're doing today?
Yeah. So here's the thing. It stemmed from a situation, a circumstance that started before my time with him. So just to give you a little bit of background. So the unfortunate part, when we get these aha moments, right, or these breakthroughs, they happen because of something that impacted us negatively. And for
Correct.
all of you that are listening right now, I'm sure you've heard Adam and all his guests come here and talk about moments where we've been hurt the most, but not necessarily in a painful physical way, but emotional way. And so for me, and what I would love everyone to take away is that my story may not be the same as yours, but I'm sure there's something similar. And my goal today is to encourage you to keep pushing for that breakthrough. It's going to happen. We cannot get away from it. And one of the things that happened for me, my husband and I were both in the 82nd back in 2013, and we found out that we were expecting. And so it was great. We had just had our little one and we're expecting again. I'm like, oh, everything's going great. We're going to have two little ones and, yada, yada, yada. Unfortunately, I miscarried at like almost 25 weeks.
I'm so
And
sorry.
so, yeah, it was, now I can, thankfully talk about it. This was 2013. It's been over 10 years now. And so, it was very hard. It was very hard for many reasons. But the hardest for me was that it affected me not only as an individual, as a woman, but also as a leader. The reason being because I did not know how to ask for help. And I did not know, or let's say I did know how to ask for help. I didn't want to ask for help because I didn't know the impact of it at the time. At the time, when you are in the 82nd and you are a first lieutenant, brand new, for me, my expectations were very high. And I'm like, people don't have time to come deal with me. I'm not going to be someone that, they need to be concerned for. So I'm going to put on my big girl pants and I'm going to continue to push through. And I'm just going to do it this way. Long story short, there was a report that needed to be out for the battalion commander, and that report didn't go out. So now the battalion commander got dinged on it. That meant that my OER was then impacted. That meant that I didn't make the first selection of becoming an officer, a captain, an O3. So that meant that I was now behind my peers. So one, I'm already insecure. Self-doubt's already coming up. I'm like, oh my gosh, they don't have time for me right now. I'm going to be okay. So that's already happening. Then I don't make the list. So here we go. Another reason, you know what? I don't belong here. I need to get out. I need to find a way to get out. So all of that's happening. And at the same time, the big army puts down a MILPER message saying that now we're downgrading, or not downgrading, but a drawdown on officers. So now all the O3s, not all, but a large majority of officers need to be out of the military because we need to continue mission in a smaller number of officers because we had too many O3s at the time. Seriously, we did. And so all of that's happening and I'm still in the fight. I'm still going. And then I get moved because 4th Brigade is no longer going to be available. Thankfully, I had a major. She had just gotten promoted to major, brand new major, female. I mean, the most badass you can think of. And she was like my mentor. She was essentially my mentor. And she's like, Wendy, I need to talk to you. Well, she said, Lieutenant Ray, I need to talk to you. And she had that hard conversation with me. And she gave me all these other options, but she's like, you know what? I think this is where you need to go. What do you think? And I'm like, what do you think? I'm waiting for you to tell me what to do. And I want your permission, essentially, too. That's what I wanted.
Right.
And she's like, no, you're going to go. I recommend you go here and let's do it. You're going to excel. You're going to do great things. And when she said that, pretty much giving me permission, I went to 18th Airborne Corps as the G1 that was going to lead the operations and awards, all of that stuff, casualties, in a position where I was still very, I was a young officer. And
Are you still a lieutenant at this
I'm
point?
still a lieutenant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
And
usually a G1 is a captain minimum, right?
Yeah. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe she sees potential in me, right? So I'm getting approval, I'm getting permission from her, and all of this is happening. I'm doing, late hours. I'm getting out of work at like 9 p.m. because we want to make sure that these officers are getting, their benefits taken care of. They're going to the units that they need to, we're actually downsizing. And so, in reactivating the unit. So I guess she's like, oh, Wendy's doing a great job. She knows how to handle herself. I think she'll perform and she'll do well. So all of that to say, I go now to 18th Airborne Corps, still, a little shaky, not taking care of myself like I'm supposed to, but I'm still in the fight. I'm like, I gotta stay in the fight. Going back to what we were talking about, right? I'm like, I have to follow through. I have to keep going no matter what. And so I get to 18th Airborne Corps and we get I'm new, pretty much the whole team is new. And then within a couple months and 90 days, we get a new lieutenant colonel and he completely changes the game. He's, this is how we're going to do business in a great way, right? He sets actual like SOPs and everything, this is how we're going to move. And the one thing that stood out to me was that he took time with every single person from lieutenant colonel all the way down to private, like E1.
So Private Snuffy is getting a visit from this lieutenant colonel, which is, for those listening, that's pretty rare. Unless that private is his driver, usually they're probably not interacting with anything less than, in my experience, a staff sergeant at minimum, right?
Yeah. And so already I'm like, man, I like this guy. He's a people person. And it makes sense, right? He's in the AG field. But I had never really experienced that before, to, again, the lowest level and even just wanting to know everything. And the one thing that he says, if you really want to continue to excel and be here, you need to take care of yourself so that you can take care of other people. And I'm like, who has been talking to him? Did somebody tell him all of my business? And then, for me, it was, again, insecurity and doubt. And he's like, listen, you got to take care of yourself. How can I support you?
Well, and it's a lot more than that. And I want to talk about this whole, experience, because, when you miscarried, you let that slide, right? And rightfully so. Like, obviously that's a huge emotional event, and you should have had leadership looking out for you to cover down on whatever it was, checking in with you. But you said something that I heard my entire career, and you have to remember, I'm an old guy. So I came in 2003. I got to my first unit, basically somewhere around 2 weeks to a month after they came home from the invasion of Iraq, right? So life for me was miserable as a private, but also what that instilled in me is it's not okay to ask for help, because I did watch dudes' careers get ended for saying, I'm struggling with this. And for those of you that don't know, like, the invasion was a completely different fight from what the entire GWAT ended up turning into. Not that they're not both traumatic and awful, and we didn't have terrible experiences, because we did, but it was just different. It was very different, and there was a lot of dudes struggling because the fighting was intense during the invasion. I mean, it was conventional warfare, kind of similar to what we would have seen in World War II, and I watched guys go get help because they're struggling mentally. And that became the mantra, is like, take a knee, face out, drive on. You're not getting help because it will ruin your career. And particularly units like the 82nd are notorious for shit like that. And I was also still in when this was going on for you in 2013, with the drawdown. I remember that. I remember them pushing all the combat experience out of the Army on purpose. They didn't want anything to do with us. They didn't want to take care of us. They didn't want us in leadership roles. They would find any excuse they could to put us out. And so I'm not surprised that you had more, issues, because now you're behind your peers, like you said, for that bad OER, or just a negative mark on your OER. It probably wasn't overall all bad, but all of that could have been solved if somebody would have let you know that it's not weak, it's not inappropriate, and it's actually encouraged to just ask for help. Just ask for help, because I think you'll agree with this. What I've learned since I've been out, and I'm sure what you've learned, is like, to me, asking people for help is the only way you get ahead, the only way you move yourself forward to the place that you're trying to go. But B, to me, it's the strongest thing that you can do. To me, it's the strongest character trait that you have, is to be vulnerable and admit, I don't have a clue how to fix the situation I'm in, and I need somebody who's, however you view it, like, somebody smarter than me. I need an adult to help me figure this out. And I'm glad that you were forthcoming with that, because I do believe that mentality is driving the suicide epidemic right now, because so many people are so stuck in that. And I can give you an example of that. I had 16 people sign up for the wait list for my community. Of that 16, 2 signed up. And it's largely, at least I think, because they're carrying this attitude of, I don't need other people's help. I can figure this out on my own. That's not at all true. It's not true. Nobody gets to where they're going by themselves. And if they tell you that they do, they're fucking flat out lying to you.
Yeah, that is the truth. And what you just brought up is a great point, right? Vulnerability. People hate it. Not in a way that they don't want to hear other people be vulnerable. Yes, we are kind of like addicted to that. We're like, oh, let's hear more. But when it comes time for their own personal, it's hard. And the reason it's hard is because it's an emotional kind of like
It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's really uncomfortable until you start practicing it, right?
Yeah. And that's it right there. And the problem that we have, not only as military, but just humans in general, we have this idea that when we are feeling something negative, we need to either run away from it, we need to escape it, we need to resist it, or we just need to avoid it completely. And, again, because we were raised in this era of, you're showing too much emotion. We don't have time for that right now. But now, for me, my goal with what I'm doing, and I know this is something similar that you're doing too, is to shed light on it being something that we are supposed to do and not doing it alone, right? Like you said, I love that you're building this community. By the way, I love all of your emails because they just really, I'm like, okay, I need to be doing this too. But it's just a way to, to keep me going as an individual. And I'm sure we all need reminders, right? Even if it's through an email, through a call, through this podcast, we need reminders, because here's the thing, especially when we leave, for those of you that are possibly getting out soon or already out, belonging becomes something that we really desperately desire, because we come from this environment, this community, and now we want to belong elsewhere outside. And it's hard. It's hard because we can't relate to the civilian and normal people that do things differently for the most part. But we can get there. It's just a matter of like how.
This is so awesome. I'm so glad you're bringing this up, because I literally last night just had this conversation with my wife. I'm doing a lot of nonprofit work and with qrfhub.org, and I am the director of recruiting, but I'm leaning all the way into that role. And it's funny that you're talking about this, the vulnerability, the getting help, the understanding that we have this desire to belong. And I literally said this to my wife last night. I was like, I love this recruiting gig with this nonprofit, because I said when I got out of the Army, I don't know how I'm going to make it happen. I don't know what it looks like, but I want to lead, and I still want to work with soldiers. Right. And I now somehow, it took fucking 9 years and a lot of, a lot of darkness, a lot of ups and downs and peaks and valleys. But over the last 8 months, I've been able to build a thing that has opened doors for me, that has put me exactly where I said I was going to be 9 years ago. And it's awesome to feel that sense of belonging again, right? Our ops guy is an SFAP guy, another infantry guy. Our founder is a Marine infantry guy, right? We've got our social media, it's being a part of that environment again, all on the same page, all after the same mission, which to me is just the most important mission that we have right now, is taking care of our veteran community, brothers, sisters, first responders, all of it, and you speaking to that sense of belonging, and me sitting here having just discovered last night, or had enough awareness to realize, like, I find myself in that position, it's so awesome. And I want that to be a lesson to those of you that are listening. Like, you can accomplish and do anything that you want that resonates inside of you. You just have to figure out how to make it happen.
Yes. And I love that you brought up a great point. I love that you said it took 9 years, because it's not going to happen overnight. And that's another piece, right? That especially in the military, we have to do everything yesterday. We move with purpose. And when we get out or when we're doing something that's not necessarily military related and it's not working right away because we're so used to the hustle, we're so used to getting things done 1,000 miles an hour, we get disappointed, we get discouraged. And I want you to hear this. It's going to take time. You're going to have to invest your time, sometimes money, for the most part, your time. And that's valuable. I mean, 9 years of all amazing things. Maybe they weren't all amazing, the 9 years,
No,
but
they
you
were
learned
awful.
so much.
Most of them were awful. It was
Yeah.
a lot of what we all go through, which is why I
Yeah.
started everything that I'm doing, is because it doesn't have to be that way. It really largely requires, a few things. For those of you who are transitioning out, you need to understand that your identity is not the military. You are someone completely different from what you think you are, or the military says that you are. The second thing is you need to get out of that fixed military mindset and start adopting the growth mindset, because that allows you to see the world from different lenses and understand that you can largely trust your gut on a lot of things. Like you're that intuition, that feeling you get in your gut that tells you, I'm fucking miserable here, I hate this career, or I don't know who I am, I need to figure that out. You need to listen to that, because it's almost like it's like this sixth sense, if you will, telling you, you're not where you're supposed to be and you should fucking do something about it. And the third thing is you need to be willing to invest in yourself in terms of being vulnerable, asking for help, spending some money on yourself, whether that's hiring a coach or a mentor, or, in my case, I just started knocking down doors and cold emailing and DMing people like, hey, I'm a guy, you're doing cool things, I want to do cool things, what can I learn from you? And hopefully, that's similar to how you view it. I think it's very similar.
100%. And this is why I love that we're both doing coaching with the communities that we're building, right? And one of the questions that I get a lot is, why women, right? Why not everyone? And, I love that question for many reasons, but most importantly, because I want to provide and create a space for women to feel safe. Because here's the thing, we've always been we're okay and comfortable with being with a majority group of men. That's completely great, right? Like, we are not going to run away from that. We can be confident. But at the same time, it's different when you are in a space where you feel safe and comfortable to say, you know what, I'm going through that too. Or I went through this specific thing, like a miscarriage. And not to say that men don't get affected, they do, of course, but it's different, right? It's a complete different experience. And that's my goal. And the same for you, right? They're probably like, why only veterans? I'm
Well,
a first responder.
exactly, like the I think it doesn't even have to be that, right? Like it doesn't need to be Wendy, why women, Adam, why just veterans. It's because I and you and I both know we cannot help them all. Like, we are one person, we can't help them all. So let's speak to those that we can help. Let those latch on to us, that we can help. I would also argue, why women. I've had some very disheartening conversations with women on this show about some of the bullshit that you guys go through with MST and harassment, and just generally having to work twice as hard to prove yourself, which I absolutely think is bullshit. And unfortunately, I wasn't around it, just due to the nature of what the infantry was when I was still in it. Was not open to females. Combat arms were not open to females until I think right around 2013-ish, right?
Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah, it was starting. It was still pretty new in 2013, but it really evolved around 2016 is when.
So yeah, Wendy, why women? Well, because I'm a fucking woman who served in the military, and I can relate to these other women with the things that they went through. I think it's largely, why do I have mostly combat arms guys coming to me? Because I was a combat arms guy with arguably more combat time than the vast majority of infantrymen who served from 2003 to 2015. You know what I mean? Like, it just is what it is. The fact that you should be looking at is, these are veterans out here helping other veterans. Like that it's really that simple. You shouldn't have to explain yourself as to why. And if more people would adopt that mindset, maybe there'd be 100 Wendy's and 100 Adams out there doing the same thing so that we could serve the entire veteran population.
Yes. And I think people just, they're curious, right? They're like, why? And, one, I appreciate their curiosity, but two, it's truly just to offer women that space. That's my biggest why, because I wish I would have had that space when I'm like,
For
okay,
sure.
what in the world am I going to do when I get out? Who the heck am I? Right? Like,
Yeah.
where do I go from here?
How did that come about for you? What was the decision to get out, and how did your transition go?
Oh gosh. So with that, we wanted to make it a career. 20 years, we're all in, we're committed. But life happens, right? I mean, we get injured. We are told that now is your time to leave. And so that's what happened for my husband. And then I tried to continue. But as we continued, it just was not working. Kind of like what you said earlier, you have this little voice or kind of like this gut feeling of like, this is the time to move on. And here's what I want to add to that too, and a recommendation for those of you that are on the fence, because I know some of you are like, should I get out? When should I get out? Do I need, a year, 3 years to get out? Here's what I want to offer you to do, especially if you are, married or you have family that are truly depending on you as dependents during this journey. Take a moment to ask yourself, why would you want to get out? And that's what I asked myself. I'm like, why do I want to get out? And I'm like, I don't want to get out. I don't want to get out. I really don't. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, no, I do want to get out. I want to be able to be there for my kids more than I am now. I was at Fort Drum with my 2 kids and my husband, and I was at work. I would literally go into the gym at like 4 a.m. so that I can be at work by 5:30, a meeting, and go to PT, go get ready in the same unit, then work all day, probably get home at like 8:30 at night and do it all over again. So I would see my kids for maybe an hour at the most. And I'm like, do I really want to keep doing this? And the answer was no. And so now, if you do get to that point and the answer is no, how can you make the best out of that time that you have there? And also, how can you make the best for your future self, for your transition post-military? And so with that, you'll then get an idea of really why you want to get out and the reason. Because here's what I always encourage the women that come to me. They're like, I'm not motivated anymore. I'm not in it anymore. Because I've had women that come to me, senior NCOs, I don't know. I'm not motivated. I need to get.
It's time. Yeah, it's time to go.
Yeah,
It's time to go. That is that intuition we're talking about. If
Right.
you don't enjoy, particularly as a senior non-commissioned officer, it is time for you to go.
You've put in enough time. But also looking at it in a way where now, how can you then still find passion even when you know it's time to go? That's what I want you to look at. What is it that you can do in this moment to continue to ignite that passion, that fire, so that you can make the best experience possible? Because if you don't, you are going to feel resentment for you as your career as a leader and for the military itself. And then you're going to be getting out and you're like, oh, the military this, the military that, when you could just start igniting that fire and that passion now for that transition, because it's going to happen. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, that's so good. So what did your transition look like? Was it pretty easy for you? Did you have a really good idea what you're going to do, or was there some struggle there?
I didn't. I had no idea. And again, I wasn't asking for help. I'm like, well, I'm not going to ask for help. I'm going to do it on my own. And I think I just talked about this on my recent episode on my podcast, episode 232, Beyond the Military podcast. And I couldn't ask for help in a way where I thought I had it all figured out, because I had a master's degree in human resources. I'm like, I can go out there and look for some job descriptions, apply my resume. I did do one thing right, though. I did sign up for a program called Onward to Opportunity, where I was able to see, the professional human resources certifications, project management, and I was able to be a part of the SFL TAP, Soldier for Life transition at Fort Drum. I did learn a lot from those programs. But what I didn't do, and I wish I would have done, and I encourage women to do now, is network. And I think you've heard me talk about this before.
Oh, this
If
is
I
my
would have
jam.
networked,
Yeah, this is my jam.
my transition would have been completely different. And again, going back to the struggle, sometimes we need to go through that in order to really see that we need to come forward. We need to learn from it.
Yeah, I love that you just touched on that, and I think a lot of what stands in the way of us getting out, because I agree with you. Networking is, there's a reason, and I used to think it was cliche. I didn't really understand it until I did. But the network is your net worth. I mean, man, that really rings so true to me. Mainly because I've seen what's happened since I started building my network and the doors that it has opened for me. It's miraculous. It's quite unbelievable, if I'm being honest. But I really think the reason we don't, particularly at the enlisted level, we don't teach networking. Like, it's not something that's spoken of, right? It's one team, one fight. Your brothers, to your left and your right. That's it. That's all you concern yourself with. But also, I think, part of why networking is so hard is because, we haven't started the healing journey. We're angry. A lot of our careers end, like mine ended 7 years shorter than I expected it to. I was med boarded out, medically retired. And so I was angry at the Army, angry at the way my career ended, angry at everything all of the time. I wasn't a people person. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to go out in public. I didn't want to be at events. If I didn't have some kind of relationship with you already, I was not interested.
You sound like an infantryman.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I think that really is kind of a problem that we all face when we get out, because the military is such a different experience. There's genuinely no place like it on earth. You cannot replicate the environment across all MOSs and all branches. You're not replicating that anywhere else than the military. And it really is hard to understand how to start networking. So I'd be curious, because I do believe so much. I mean, that's like the number one thing that I would tell transitioning veterans is, start building your network from the day you come in the Army or the Marines or whatever branch you go in. The day you enlist or commission, that is the day that you need to start building that network. Everybody you meet, everybody you talk to, everybody you interact with, if you just need to go borrow something from somebody, put that contact in your phone, remember them, because it's going to come in handy. What is your advice? Like, how do you teach people to network? Because to me, I've learned about myself, I'm just what they call a super connector. I'm just a professional networker. It just comes natural to me. So I don't really know how to teach it. I'm curious to hear your opinion on how you teach people to network, and then I'll tell you how I do it.
Yeah. And before I do that, I want to say that you probably don't know this. I don't think I've shared this with you already, because it happened like last week. Someone reached out to me and they said that they were connected to you. And I'm like, oh, that's even better. Yeah, let's talk, right? That's just an example.
Yeah.
And again, you are a super connector. And I love that you started by saying that you were the opposite of that, because some of you need to hear this, right? You maybe classify yourself as an introvert, classify yourself as I don't like other people, or I'm just not a social butterfly, which is completely okay. And to answer your question, I would start with, here's the thing that I always encourage and emphasize with the women that I'm working with, or anyone. I was actually on the phone with an NCO. He and I work together. His military occupation is he's transportation. He was put in my unit, my office, to help us and support the entire brigade.
So you got an 88 mic and an
88
S1
mic.
stop? That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and so we're still connected, right? And he started networking, same thing like you. Now he's injured. Now he's leaving the military. And one of the things that I emphasize is to keep it simple. Keep it simple. We love to overcomplicate things, especially as women. We're like, we need it to be fancy. We need it to be cute. We need it to
You
be.
said it, not me. I did not say that, for the record. Wendy Ray said that.
Most of us, if you're like me, it needs to be perfect. And again, it is the military mentality to some point or some extent, because we want it to be great. And here's the thing, keep it simple, B- work, anything that is third grade level language, go for it. If you need to go to that level, it doesn't need to be fancy. I want you to think about it in a way where you are now preparing yourself for the next couple of years, because we do not know what the future holds. We really don't, especially in the military. If you are airborne, you're jumping out of airplanes, this is something that you really need to do now. Like, you have no idea, like infantry, any combat arms, really any type. Again, family happens, right? You may have a family situation. You may be HR like me, but family happens. And so, in order for you to do that, I encourage you to start simple. So, that's step number one. Step number two, connect with people that you're already familiar with. So, I know you know at least one person that got out 20 years ago, 10 months ago, a day ago, and say, hey, Wendy, I know you just got out, or I know you're getting out in the next month. Let's stay connected. Here's my Instagram. Here's my TikTok, whatever Gen Z or, whatever generation you are, or whatever platform you enjoy the most. Let's stay connected, or text message. It's that simple. You don't have to call. You don't have to email. You don't have to make it this grand announcement. You just say, hey, let's connect. Okay, that's step number two. Step number three, incorporate it into your battle rhythm. Meaning, if you connect with people, let's say your mom or your dad or a close friend once a week, incorporate that once a week. If you don't connect with family 2 weeks, do it every 2 weeks. The reason being is because you want to continue to stay in people's minds. Meaning, people are going to forget, especially if you are someone that has kids, that have your own, business outside of the military, or maybe you're doing 30 different things at the same time. You know that we will forget who you are because we're doing so many things. So incorporate it and keep yourself top of mind for them, because they might need something too. And we just never know, right? And now, how do you do this? Again, it could be that simple with someone that's familiar.
LinkedIn, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
I honestly, I say that because it's such a high leverage platform where, because I agree with everything that you're saying, right? All those steps are important, but it's really nurturing the connection and the follow up. And LinkedIn has that built in through posting, because when you connect with somebody, you reach out to them in the DMs, and my messages are really simple. Like, hey man, I love what you're doing in the veteran space. Love to connect with you. Half the time I don't even send a note anymore, because they can just see I have so much content and what I'm about, and you can get to that point as well. But then the follow-up is done for you based on what you're posting about, as long as it's on brand and on message and aligns with what you originally reached out to that person to do. And in like my case, an example is I'm just looking for everybody that's an entrepreneur in different spaces, so that I have connections that I can send all of these veterans that come to me with their questions. If I don't know the answer, I do know I have somebody in my network in finance that can answer that question. I now have somebody in my network in franchising that can answer those questions. I have people in my network in the insurance industry that can answer those questions. It's so powerful. Just yesterday, a couple of weeks ago, I had an insurance people reach out to me wanting me to get back in the industry, not interested, whatever. My best friend called me. He's like, dude, I need something. I was like, I got the perfect thing for you. Like this, you would be perfect for this. Had a phone call with them yesterday, meeting with them on Monday. If they can close my best friend, they get me in the deal too, right? Like everybody wins when you start building a network like this. And it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. There's nothing to be afraid of once you understand the worst thing that they can say is no. You're going to get 100 of those before you get a yes. And it's not personal. It's in fact, they're never even going to remember that they told you no. And in fact, some people will come back around after they've told you no and be the ones asking to be connected to you. And that is the coolest feeling in the world.
Yeah, I love that you said that, because that does happen. And
it happens all the time.
Yeah. And some people will tell you no too, like you brought up a great point. Not to say that they don't want to help you, because let's face it, we love helping people because it feels good. If anything, I can't remember what the quote was, but that it was selfish for them to like donate or do something good. It's a selfish act or something like that. It was pretty cute, because I'm like, oh, that's actually me. I love to do things because it feels good. But that's pretty much almost any human on this earth. But it's not that they don't want to help you, it's that they have a lot going on too, right? And it's sometimes, or at least the way I see it, that no is good for me because now I'm stretching and reaching out to people that maybe I never really considered, and now I'm pushing myself to do something out of my comfort zone, which is great. And then on top of that, it's great that they told you no from the beginning. They're being honest. Then if I'm like, hey Adam, can you help me? You're like, yeah, I can help you, but I don't have time. And next time we're trying to help each other, oh, I don't have time. So now we're wasting each other's time. Networking sucks. It doesn't work, right? And so again, that's a mentality that we would go into if we get stuck with someone that lies to us and says, yes, I can help you, or I be able to support you when they can't. So if anything, appreciate and be grateful that they told you no, and now you're pushing yourself to network somewhere else and
That's such a
find the
great
best out of
point.
it.
It's such a great point because you get told no, or getting told no is better than a soft yes, where you then like, hey, can we get on each other's calendar? Somebody sends a calendar link and nothing ever gets booked, and you're just like, whoa, what's going on here? I'd rather get a flat out no. To me, a no is really just the universe telling me that's not the door I'm supposed to open. It's time to move on.
Yeah.
Like honestly, it's I don't take it. I used to take it personal, right?
Yeah.
Like when you start out, you're going to
Me
take it
too.
personal. It's
Yeah.
hard not to, but you will very quickly develop a callus to that. And you'll be like, all right, fine. Fuck you. Don't come
Right.
knocking on my door when I do make shit happen. You know what I mean? If you can
But they
adopt
will.
that attitude, and they will, they
Yeah.
really will,
Which is a good thing because then you're showing up as who you are. You're showing up with value, providing value. Like you said, LinkedIn is such a powerful tool. I love LinkedIn. And with that, the community aspect of it, you just never know who that person can connect to you or who you can connect that person to. Just like you did with your friend for the insurance stuff. I mean, it's powerful. And again, you can start with simply one individual. And then when you feel comfortable to expand that network, okay, now I need to find someone in the real estate because I'm going to buy a house in 3 years, whatever it may be, right? Like you want that support because you're building trust, you're building this comfort space, this space of I can do things even when I don't know all of it because I have someone that knows or has more expertise in this topic.
Yeah, I love that. And it's I think where people go wrong in networking is they just try to cast too wide of a net. And by that I mean you should be trying to network with people who are in a space that you're actually interested in or think that you might be interested in.
Yes.
I'm not going and connecting with project managers and Lean Six Sigma black belts, even though I have two of those certifications. I have a green belt and I have Agile project management certification, mainly because I'm trying to open some doors through some programs that require you to have those. That shit doesn't interest me. I don't need people in my network like that. So you're not going to see me out there networking with Lean Six Sigma or Agile Scrum Masters or anything like that. So, that's my caveat to networking is it really is as simple as reaching out to people that you're interested in. Don't be afraid. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you do. They're not any different. And I think what you'll end up finding is some of those people with 34, 35, 36,000 followers are actually way easier to talk to than some of the people with 500.
Yes, 100%, because they've been doing this for so long and they just love to continue to network. And that's a beautiful thing to do. And the last thing I'll say with kind of like, keeping it simple and just reaching out with people that are within the common, that you're comfortable with, and just starting there, join a community. It could be a LinkedIn community, a Facebook community. It could be the strategic veteran community. Join a
A
community.
stronghold. Yeah. Join my community.
Sorry,
I'd love to have
stronghold.
you. I promise you, we're doing some really awesome things in there. And
Yeah,
some really cool connections have already been made, and we've only been launched for 13 days. So,
exactly. So, join a community where you are going to be able to invest time. And if you need to invest money as well, you know that that's going to pay off. Here's the thing that really sometimes bothers me is when we don't want to invest or have any monetary investment. And I think that this comes a lot for our military community because we're so used to getting everything covered for, which is great. I'm not saying that we shouldn't. We should. But there comes a time where
Yeah, you
you
got to get
want
out of the
to
entitlement mindset. You're not
entitlement.
entitled to
That's the word.
shit. You're
You
not
said it,
entitled
Adam.
to shit. What you're entitled to is working hard for what you want. That's what you're entitled to. And I'm so glad that you hit on this point, because you're willing to go spend $50,000-$60,000 on a college education, sometimes way more, double, triple that.
You said college.
You
I
know,
thought you were saying a car.
No. Yeah, cars, right? But college, right? You'll take fucking student loans beyond your GI Bill to achieve this degree and then struggle to get a job, but you won't go invest $20 a month to be a part of a community of like-minded people who have industry experience and can prove to you their success. To me, that's more valuable than any institution's piece of paper degree. You're going to learn so much more by talking to others than you are by being stuck in a damn classroom being lectured at. This is coming from somebody who took that traditional get out of the military, use your GI Bill, went to flight school, got a bachelor's in business and psychology. It's done fuck all for me. It's done nothing for me.
You said I took this traditional route, which it is pretty traditional still. But here's the thing, right? I love that you touched on that, and be willing to invest, right? Be willing, no matter what it takes, because the return on investment, I think, is there a thousandfold,
Thousandfold.
because you're in a group where you want to be there, and you're willing to make mistakes. You're willing to do this with others around you to hold you accountable.
Yeah, I love it. Wendy, man, we've run out of time because you've got a hard stop, and this has been an awesome conversation. Please tell everybody about your podcast real quick, and then tell everybody where they can find you and get in touch with you, because you are such an amazing person to have in the network. And I look forward to building a relationship with you and what we get to do in this space together as we grow. It's just going to be so awesome.
Thank you so much, Adam. It really does mean a lot. I know you and I connected briefly before we scheduled this, and I just love everything that you're doing, not only on LinkedIn, but just, the nonprofit that you're doing, connecting with other women veterans, I think is key, and greatly appreciate your support to the women community. And we need more of you to do this. We need more of you to, come up and say, how can I support you and the women community? So thank you.
I think you're going to be really happy with what I do at the end of this. We're going to talk after I stop the recording, but there's some pretty awesome women that I've had on this show that I want to connect you with, who have some really awesome ideas. And I think you could be an instrumental part of that too. So yeah, I'm happy to do it. And just to clarify, like, my show is largely male dominated. For whatever reason, women aren't, I guess, resonating with the show. And I've had 5 or 6 on. I'm open to everybody. I will help everybody. I genuinely want to help the entire veteran community. So clearing the air on that, it's not my fault. I've opened it to everybody. Please come my way. I will talk to anybody. I mean that. Yeah.
No, and it will happen, right? I think it takes time as you continue to evolve, and as I continue to evolve too. I think it's a matter of, then maybe I'll have some Coast Guard women. Right now I have like 0, but
I have 0 Coast Guard at all. I can't wait to get a puddle pirate in here.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So I think it's definitely going to happen for us. But also, thank you for this opportunity. It's been a pleasure to not only speak to you, but also with your audience. And, for those of you listening in, please leave him a review, subscribe to his podcast, follow him on LinkedIn. A great individual. Love watching all your videos because they just motivate me. He's either walking or he's showing off the beaches in Florida, but that's okay too.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you'll learn so much from just your connections that you have. And so again, thank you. And for those of you that have not connected with me on LinkedIn, please do so, especially if you're getting out of the military. I not only post content on their videos, but also my podcast episodes, Beyond the Military Podcast, where you will learn career tips, life tips, any emotional and mental tips you can get there, because that's what I'm all about. I have a 9-to-5. I have kids that I'm constantly chasing around, but I do find time to not only spend time to communicate with more women, but also to encourage them and empower them so that they can equip themselves with all the tools and resources that they need to help them in the military transition. So come connect with me, and I'm happy to connect with you. Thank you so much, Adam.
Yeah, I love, dude, what a great way to end that is with what you just said there. Like, I have a 9-to-5, I have kids, but I make time to do this. So you who are listening, who are coming up with every excuse in the book, well, I work a 9 to 5 because I got to provide for my wife and kids and this, that, and the other, and I don't have time to build on the side. Bullshit. You have plenty of time to build on the side. You just don't want to do it. Get out of your own way and start doing it. You can live the life that you are meant to live. I promise you.
Yes. Netflix will be there.
Yes, it's not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere.
Wendy, thank you so much for being here. I love this conversation. I can't wait to have you back on, as you grow and I grow and just revisit this and just have another wonderful conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Miss Wendy Ray.
Thank you so much, Adam.
Yep. Take care, everybody. We'll see you next week. That's our show, and I'm truly thankful you've joined us at the Strategic Veteran. If our conversation today sparked curiosity or if you're ready to elevate your game, I'm here to help. Visit thestrategicveteran.com for exclusive show notes and resources or to book a coaching session directly with me. Take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and share your review. Your support makes all the difference. For more insights and daily strategies, let's connect on LinkedIn and keep the conversation going. Remember, this isn't just a podcast, it's your strategic advantage in action. Until our next rendezvous, stay bold and continue the mission.